Where are you? It's an urgent work matter. Don't call me back. My husband, Matthew, abruptly hung up, cutting me off. I let out a deep sigh in the parking lot of the soccer stadium. Right before me was a familiar car. The make, the stickers, it was undeniably his car. If it was such an urgent job, why was he at a soccer stadium? A sense of unease spread through my chest. I had to find out. As I made my way to the stands, there they were, Matthew, an unfamiliar woman, and a young child. They were seated together, eagerly cheering for the game. Their image was displayed on the big screen for all to see. I quietly approached and sat in the seat right next to them. Thanks for saving me a spot. This is such a great view. His face twisted in shock as he turned to look at me. But this was only the beginning. My name is Sarah. I've been married to Matthew for 10 years. We have a son, Ryan, and a daughter, Emma, who is 3 years younger. Our days were busy, but filled with happiness. However, those blissful days started to change little by little. I first met Matthew during our university days. He was kind to everyone and incredibly thoughtful. It was only a matter of time before I fell for him. We started dating, and our relationship naturally led to marriage. In the beginning, everything was fresh and exciting. I felt like I was at the peak of happiness. But things began to shift when our son, Ryan, was born. Shortly after his birth, Matthew was assigned to work away from home. What should we do? Ryan is still so little. Should we all move together? Sarah, you have your job, and staying here means you'll have plenty of support. For now, I'll go by myself. I'll come back on weekends, so don't worry. He was right. Being close to my parents made raising Ryan much easier. So I decided to stay, managing life with just Ryan and me. With Matthew away during the week, I had to handle everything on my own. Commuting to work, dropping Ryan off and picking him up from daycare, and juggling housework and parenting in the evenings. At first, I was overwhelmed, but with help from my mom and friends, I managed to get by. Weekends were the highlight of my week when Matthew returned home, and we could spend time as a family. Ryan adored his dad, rushing to the door to greet him the moment he arrived. Ryan, how have you been? Great, really great. Seeing their interactions reminded me that having our family together was the best thing. However, after Emma was born, life became even more demanding. On top of caring for Ryan, there was Emma to look after, along with my job. Balancing all three was far from easy. Sarah, you've been looking tired lately, haven't you? Sometimes, when Matthew came home on the weekends, he would show concern like that. But over time, his concern began to feel superficial. I am tired, but it's not like I can just give up. I have no choice but to handle everything myself, I replied with a hint of sarcasm, and he only gave a wry smile. I'll help out on the weekends, so don't overdo it. Weekends aren't enough. Perhaps startled by my raised voice, he didn't say anything more. By the time Ryan turned 9 and joined a soccer team, my life had become even more hectic. Weekends were spent taking Ryan to practices or games and cheering alongside Emma. Afterward, we'd usually go out to eat before heading home. Mom, we won again today. That's amazing, Ryan. Great job. Ryan's growth and achievements became my biggest support. Meanwhile, Matthew's routine of only coming home on weekends remained unchanged. He was barely involved in the finer aspects of family life. I wanted to talk to you about something related to Ryan's school. Sorry, I've had a week full of overtime. Could you let me rest for a bit? Sure, but lately, I can't tell if you come home to see us or just to sleep. My words, laced with bitterness, left him with nothing but a troubled expression. Even when he was home, He wasn't much help during the weekdays when he was away. I had grown accustomed to managing everything on my own with Ryan and Emma. In fact, I found life surprisingly comfortable. I could handle things at my own pace, and I genuinely enjoyed my work. On the contrary, when he came home on weekends, I often felt a bit stifled. "Sarah, where's my shirt? Find it yourself. I'm busy too." Even small interactions like this started to feel bothersome. My friend said, "Give me some space." And honestly, I think that's what I need too. When I shared this with Mom, she gave me a wry smile and said, "Maybe it's because Matthew isn't around that you're able to make time for yourself." And she was right. For me, the time when he wasn't home had become precious not just for managing chores and parenting, but for having control over my life. Still, it wasn't as if the four of us had stopped spending time together entirely. There were moments when he would come to watch Ryan's soccer games, and we'd go out to eat as a family. "Matthew, can you come to the next game?" "Yay, I'll try to make it." But the dissatisfaction brewing in my heart grew a little more each day. The day he promised to come watch Ryan's soccer game, I left the house early with Ryan and Emma and headed to the venue. "Give it your all today, okay? Dad's definitely looking forward to this." "Yay, I'm going to win, so watch me." When we arrived at the venue, the game began, but as the match neared its end, there was still no sign of Matthew. Seeing Ryan occasionally glance at the stands in search of his dad made my heart ache. After the game, despite the team's victory, Ryan seemed downcast. "Ryan, you were amazing today." I was so moved. But Dad didn't come. I couldn't bring myself to say anything in response. On the way home, holding Emma in my arms and walking hand in hand with Ryan, I felt something inside me crumble. When we got home, Matthew was lying on the couch in the living room, watching TV. "Matthew, what happened to the game? You said you'd come." "Sorry, I was just so tired. I'll definitely go next time." Next time. Do you even understand how much Ryan was looking forward to this? Matthew kept making excuses, and my frustration only grew. Still, as a mom, I had to keep going. So the next morning, I started another busy day as usual. But facing him became increasingly tiresome, and I couldn't shake the sense of distance growing between us. Life was supposed to be busy, yet happy. I wondered if I would ever rediscover the meaning of those words. With those thoughts lingering, I kept moving forward for the sake of our family. As time passed, Ryan entered 8th grade, and Emma was in 5th grade. Though life remained busy, the joy of watching my kids grow made me feel more fulfilled as a mom. Matthew, on the other hand, continued to operate at his own pace. Where he once came home every weekend, his visits stretched to every 2 or 3 weeks. By this point, I stopped caring about when he would come home. One day, Emma casually said something that stirred a small ripple in our family life. "Hey, Mom, why don't we surprise Dad for his birthday?" "A surprise? Yeah. He's not going to come home anyway, right? We could make it a trip too." "A trip? That might not be a bad idea." I wasn't the only one who agreed with Emma's idea. "That sounds great." Ryan chimed in, and the two of them immediately began planning. Wanting to make this happen for my kids, I decided to check Matthew's schedule. "Matthew, what's your plan for this weekend? Are you busy with work?" "No, I'm off this weekend." "Why?" "Oh, nothing. I was just curious." Without giving him a reason, I ended the call. This made the plan for surprising Matthew on his birthday feel more real. As we worked out the details, the kids chatted excitedly. On the day, "Let's go by ourselves without telling Dad." "That's a great idea." "Mom, you can wait in the car." "Fine, do as you like." With that decided, I booked accommodations near Matthew's apartment. We planned to stay there the night before and finalize the details of the surprise that evening. The kids were full of laughter, brainstorming how they would catch Matthew off guard. Even though they were at an age where they could be difficult, I found myself thinking how adorable they still were. On the day of the surprise, Emma and Ryan were already bustling around, breaking the morning calm. "Ryan, can you make sure to say happy birthday properly?" "Of course I can. But Emma, I bet you'll be so nervous you won't say anything." "That's not true. I even have a present to give him." Emma held a small box tightly in her hand, a gift she had chosen for her dad. Ryan, on the other hand, had a handmade card with a heartfelt message he had written himself. Both of them wore expressions filled with a mix of nerves and excitement, their hopes clearly growing inside them. "Do you both have everything? Double check." "Okay. Yep. We're all set." "Mom, make sure you wait for us while we're gone." "Okay. Of course. I'll stay in the car and wait, so take your time and have fun." Hearing this, they exchanged smiles. As planned, I parked in the lot across from Matthew's apartment and stayed in the car, watching the kids walk toward the building. Their backs were full of anticipation, and I couldn't help but smile as I watched them go. "See you soon." "All right, have fun." But after they left to meet Matthew, I found myself witnessing something completely unexpected. From the car, I had a clear view of Matthew from the apartment. I saw him step out, and before I could process what was happening, he pulled his smartphone out of his pocket and started checking something. Moments later, a car pulled up. It was a vehicle clearly designed to appeal to women, a bright pastel-colored body with cute stickers on the windows. The passenger door opened, and without any hesitation, Matthew got in. My chest tightened. What is this? Whose car is that?" A wave of unease swept over me. I thought about confronting him right then and there, but the possibility of the kids returning stopped me. I instantly decided that this was not something they should witness, and all I could do was watch as the car carrying Matthew drove away. Afterward, Ryan and Emma returned from the apartment. Their steps were heavy, and their disappointment was painfully clear. "Mom, Dad wasn't there. We came all this way for nothing." "Exactly. We got ready so early this morning for this." "I see." I tried my best to hide my own unease. Emma clutched the gift in her hand tightly, her head lowered. Ryan, too, looked frustrated and let out a small sigh. Seeing them like this made my heart ache. I wanted to say something to comfort them, but I was confused myself, not knowing where Matthew had gone. "Listen, you two, the day's not over yet. It's still a holiday, so let's not be sad. Why don't we go watch a soccer match?" "Soccer?" When I saw a slight spark of interest in Ryan's eyes, I felt a tiny surge of relief. "That's right. You've been wanting to see that team play for a while, haven't you?" "Surprise, I got us tickets." "Really? Mom, you're the best, thanks." Ryan's excitement eased some of my tension, though Emma still looked unsettled. "Soccer's nice and all, but do you think Dad will really come back home?" "I'm sure he will. Maybe work's just been keeping him busy." "I guess so. Yeah, maybe." "Mom, let's go already." Both Emma and Ryan seemed to cheer up a little as they climbed into the car. As I drove, I kept glancing at their reflections in the rearview mirror. Ryan gradually brightened, and Emma began smiling faintly in response to his mood. I resolved to make this day as enjoyable as possible for them, even if only during the match. That was the only thing I could do for them now, I told myself. Yet my mind remained clouded with the earlier scene I had witnessed. Matthew getting into that car, the distinct design of the vehicle. Was it just a work associate, or something else? I was torn between wanting to know and fearing the answer. It felt like the weight of a harsh truth was pressing down on me. As we drove to the stadium, Ryan stared out the window and murmured, "Still, where could Dad have gone? He hasn't been coming home lately. Does he even care about us anymore?" Of course, he does. He's probably just busy. He always says how hard his job is, right? Maybe he's working today too. Emma chimed in, trying to reassure him. Her words, meant to encourage Ryan, only felt more painful to me. After all, I, too, doubted if Matthew's absence was truly due to work. "That's right," I said, forcing a smile. "Dad has his own things to deal with. Let's focus on enjoying the soccer match today, okay?" I tried to force my voice to sound cheerful, but even I could tell it lacked any real conviction. The two of them nodded at my words, but their expressions remained awkward and uncertain. An uneasy silence filled the car. What if my worst fears were true? Every time that thought crossed my mind, a surge of anger welled up from deep within me. We eventually arrived at the venue, and as I searched for a parking spot, one car caught my eye. The make, the color of the body, and the stickers on the windows. It was unmistakable. It was the same car he had gotten into earlier. The image of him climbing into the passenger seat flashed vividly in my mind. There it is. What is it? Nothing. It's nothing. My chest tightened, and my mind went blank. My hands trembled, and I could feel my heart racing as I parked the car. Almost instinctively, I grabbed my smartphone and dialed Matthew's number. As the ringtone echoed, I realized my grip on the steering wheel had tightened to the point where my knuckles turned white. When the ringing stopped, he threw the line. "What is it?" "I'm busy right now." "Where are you?" "Where exactly are you?" "I'm at work." "It's an important project, so let's talk later." "Work? Really? You told me you had the day off." I couldn't hide the suspicion in my voice. Matthew seemed to sense it in that brief pause, and he responded in a clearly irritated tone. "Are you accusing me of something?" "It's an emergency job. Don't call me again." With that, he abruptly ended the call. The sound of the disconnected line lingered in my ears as I stared at my smartphone in disbelief. My hands were still trembling, and I felt cold sweat trickling down my back. In the silence that followed, a distant sound reached my ears, cheers and chants. I rolled down the window slightly and felt the energy of the nearby stadium seep into the car. The unmistakable excitement of a soccer match crowd heightened my sense of distrust. Matthew's claim of being at an emergency work meeting felt hollow, almost laughable, against the backdrop of that noise. Unbelievable. The word escaped my lips, laced with a level of anger that even surprised me. The suspicion that Matthew was lying was now solidifying into certainty, but I couldn't let my emotions erupt here. The kids were waiting. No matter what, I couldn't lose my composure in front of them. As I stepped out of the car, Emma looked up at me with concern. "Mom, are you okay? You seem kind of off." Ryan glanced over as well, tilting his head slightly. "Do you think Dad's at the game too?" Oh well. Dad said he was busy, so I don't think he could make it today." I forced myself to sound calm as I responded, but inside, anger and doubt were swirling uncontrollably. Unsure of what else to do, I decided to stay silent and lead the two of them to the stands. My steps were heavy, weighed down by the growing anger toward Matthew. As the cheers and chanting from the stadium drew closer, I bit my lip and tried to steady myself. There was a chance I might spot Matthew in the crowd. That thought refused to leave my mind. The stands were brimming with energy when we arrived. We found empty seats and sat down, pretending to watch the game, while I scanned the crowd for him. The kids, thankfully, were absorbed in the game, but my own heart was restless, my pulse quickening. Then, suddenly, I froze at what I saw on the central screen. There he was, Matthew, sitting with an unfamiliar woman and a child beside her. They looked like a perfect little family. The three of them were smiling and cheering enthusiastically, their happiness displayed vividly on the screen. So this is what he meant by an emergency job, huh? I bit my lip, struggling to keep my emotions in check. Next to me, Ryan and Emma had noticed the screen too. They sat frozen in shock. "Mom, isn't that Dad?" Ryan whispered. "Who's that woman? And the kid? Why's he with them?" Emma asked, her voice trembling. Their distress was palpable, but I had no choice but to stay composed. If I let my emotions take over now, it would only deepen their hurt. "Focus on the game," I said firmly. "We'll talk about this later." But, with that, they fell silent, turning their attention back to the game, though their confusion lingered in their eyes. Inside me, however, a storm was raging. Matthew wasn't seated far from us, close enough that I could clearly make him out with my own eyes. I could see him laughing and chatting with the woman, his expression carefree and warm. The sight ignited a burning anger deep within me, consuming every other thought. Throughout the game, my mind was elsewhere, consumed by one question: what truth lay behind Matthew's actions? The match unfolding before me faded into the background, overshadowed by the betrayal I could feel sinking into my chest. As I quietly strategized how to confront Matthew, I resolved what needed to be done. The moment the woman and child left their seats, I made my decision. It was time to tell Ryan and Emma the truth. I couldn't keep hiding Matthew's lies from them any longer, nor did I want to. Turning to them, I began speaking in as calm a voice as I could muster. I didn't want to hurt them, but there was no way to avoid it now. "Emma, Ryan, I need you to listen carefully. You saw Dad on the screen earlier, right? He was with another woman and her child." "Yeah, I saw him." "Who were they? Why was he with them?" Their eyes widened in shock, confusion clouding their faces. After a brief pause, I continued, carefully choosing my words. "Dad, he's doing something he can't tell us about. He's been lying to our family and spending time with that woman." "What do you mean? Something he can't tell us?" "It means that he's seeing someone else, someone he might love." "No way." Emma, still young, struggled to process the revelation. Ryan, however, grasped the meaning almost immediately. "I don't want to believe it either," I admitted, "but that's why I'm going to confront Dad directly. I need to hear it from him. Of course, I'll make sure he doesn't try to escape," Ryan said firmly. "Me too," Emma added. "I want to ask him myself." Feeling their determination, I turned and began walking toward where Matthew was seated. Matthew was watching the game, but his occasional glances around hinted that he was on edge. The seats beside him had bags placed on them, clearly marking where the woman and child had been sitting earlier. I strode confidently to his row and sat down right next to him. "This match, we've really been looking forward to it, haven't we? Thanks for saving us such good seats. It's a great spot to watch from," I said, my tone dripping with pointed sarcasm. Matthew turned to me, startled, his eyes wide with panic. "What, Sarah? What are you doing here?" "Hello there." His awkward, flustered demeanor was almost laughable. Without a word, I raised my hand and pointed toward the far section of the stands. Emma and Ryan were sitting there, glaring at him from a distance. "Wait, Sarah, what's going on? Why are you here? Why shouldn't I be? Who are these seats for, Matthew?" Well, you're misunderstanding. It's not. I mean, there's a good explanation." Matthew stammered, scrambling for an excuse, but I wasn't interested in hearing it. Seeing his growing panic only fueled my anger. Misunderstanding? Really? What exactly am I misunderstanding, Matthew? I saw you getting into a car with a woman I don't know. I saw you laughing and cheering with her here. I've seen everything. Well, it's not what it looks like. Matthew couldn't respond. Then, perhaps noticing the attention from those around us, he grabbed my arm and, in a low voice, angrily shouted, "Why are you here? Take the kids and go home, now. Wasn't it supposed to be work for you, Matthew? Here you are, with a woman and a child. How about you explain what's really going on?" Matthew's face was completely cornered, but just then, the woman returned. She was holding a boy, about 7 years old, who immediately ran over to Matthew, calling out, "Dad." At that moment, Emma, who had rushed over, asked in a low voice, "Dad, who's this kid?" Matthew's face briefly twisted in discomfort. He looked away, opening his mouth to speak, but quickly closed it again, unable to answer. "Answer me? We're a family, right? Why are you with someone else?" Ryan, who had caught up, also threw his questions at Matthew. Matthew seemed rattled by their pressure, his gaze darting around as he mumbled excuses. "It's not like that, Ryan. Just calm down, I'll explain. It's a misunderstanding." "What do you mean, misunderstanding?" "Mom said she saw everything." "What's the difference?" Tears in her eyes, Emma looked at Matthew with piercing eyes, continuing to press him. Seeing them both so upset made my heart ache, but it also made my anger toward Matthew burn even stronger. "It's not a misunderstanding, is it? Stop lying, Matthew. Sarah, stop. Don't make a scene here." He tried to pull me away and force me to stand up, but Ryan shouted at him, "Dad, don't try to run away. You've betrayed us, right? Then explain yourself." All eyes in the area were on him, and he looked completely trapped. The woman behind him watched in uncertainty. He tried to explain something to her, but she clearly seemed confused and grabbed his arm, whispering something. Watching this interaction only fueled my anger even more. "Who are you? Are you an acquaintance? Could you just stay over there quietly?" The woman looked perplexed at my question but didn't respond, hiding behind Matthew. "Sarah, stop. This is bad." The surrounding crowd had fully focused on us, and murmurs spread through the area. I smiled and shook off Matthew's grip on my arm. "Fine, I'll get up, but let's talk properly, shall we? Emma and Ryan have a lot of questions for you." Matthew's face went pale, and he glared at me, eventually leading me behind the venue. The woman, child, Emma, and Ryan followed silently behind. Once we arrived behind the venue, Matthew began shouting at me in a low voice. "Hey, what are you thinking? Are you trying to embarrass me like this?" His words only made my anger boil over. I kept my composure but calmly met his gaze and responded, "Who's embarrassing who here? Maybe you should start taking responsibility for what you've done. Dad, tell me, why did that boy call you Dad? Is he your child?" At those words, Matthew's expression froze for a moment. "I need to know too. Maybe this isn't something to ask in front of the child, but I need you to be clear. Is he your child?" "No, that's not." Matthew started to speak but ended up saying nothing. Seeing this, Ryan stepped forward and glared at Matthew. "Dad, what's going on? You better explain yourself." Matthew, looking flustered, began to make excuses. "It's not like that. It's like a business thing." "Are you still lying? A business thing, watching soccer with some woman and child? What are you talking about? Does that look like a business thing? If you're going to lie, At least come up with a better story. Matthew seemed at a loss for words after that. Then Emma, her voice trembling with tears, continued, "Dad, we came here today to celebrate your birthday. Ryan and I even got presents, and we were really looking forward to it." Those words seemed to pierce Matthew, and his face twisted for a moment. However, Ryan, with a cold voice, pressed on. "But you know, maybe it doesn't even matter if Dad's here or not. After all, he's spending time with another family instead of us." Just as he opened his mouth to respond, the other woman, Jessica, spoke up. "Wait a second, I've been listening quietly, but what exactly are you talking about?" She looked up at Matthew with confusion, grabbing his arm and whispering, "Matthew, who are these people? What's going on?" "Myself and these kids are Matthew's real family. Could you please explain why you're with us?" Jessica looked surprised at these words, then turned her gaze to Matthew. "Matthew, what's going on? You told me your family was falling apart, and that you were getting a divorce. And you said you didn't have any kids." At those words, Emma and Ryan's faces darkened even more. "Don't have kids? So are we invisible to you? How low can you go?" Matthew desperately waved his hands, trying to explain something to Jessica. "No, it's not like that. It's a misunderstanding. Our family has been struggling lately, but we're still trying to work things out." "Work things out? When and with who? I've never heard of anything like that." Interrupting his words, I coldly retorted, "We've been together for 3 years. Was it all a lie? Did you deceive me?" My voice shook as I confronted Matthew. It seemed that he had been involved with this single mother for the past 3 years. Behind me, Ryan clenched his fists and, in a low voice, once again questioned Matthew. 3 years. Did you ever think about how we've been waiting for you, Dad? If Dad isn't going to tell the truth, then fine. You probably wanted to pretend we were never even part of your life from the start." Matthew, standing there, seemed to have no response. Before he could say anything, I quietly spoke. "It's over, Matthew. Don't ever involve us again." With those words, I took Emma and Ryan's hands and silently left the scene. There was no sound of anyone following us from behind. Only the sound of the children's sobs echoed, stabbing at my heart. At that moment, I caught sight of a group of people in the corner of my vision, holding up a banner with a message of support for the players. As soon as I saw the large fabric with encouraging words written for the players, an idea sparked in my mind. "Excuse me, could I borrow a little bit of this fabric? I'd like to write a special message." The people preparing the banner seemed a little surprised, but seeing the urgency on my face, they kindly agreed. They handed me a small portion of the fabric, and I took a pen in hand without hesitation and began writing on it. Then I returned to my seat, but when I saw Matthew, calmly watching the game as if nothing had happened, my anger swelled up again. Had Jessica and the child already left, Matthew was happily enjoying the game by himself. "Ryan, Emma, stay here." "Okay." I walked over to Matthew for my final act of revenge. And then, "All right, let's get back to enjoying the game." I deliberately said it in a bright tone as I sat next to Matthew. "What were you doing? Didn't you leave?" "Oh, just a little something. I wanted to come for the final cheer." "The final cheer?" Matthew looked puzzled, but didn't say anything further. I gripped the banner tightly and waited for the right moment. Yes, it was halftime. Soon enough, as halftime arrived, the time came for the audience in the stands to be shown on the screen. The camera focused on the excited crowd, slowly projecting them onto the screen. I had been waiting for this moment. Finally, I unfurled the banner. In big, bold letters, it read, May the cheating man's love be realized. At that moment, a murmur spread through the crowd. On the screen, Matthew and a banner were clearly visible. All eyes in the audience turned to Matthew, and the voices grew louder and louder. Moreover, this game was being broadcasted on television. Matthew, on the screen, turned pale and froze, unable to move. "What are you doing? Stop it." Matthew hurriedly tried to grab my arm, but I calmly shook it off. "Oh, what's wrong? You should stand tall and proud since you're getting such a warm reception." As those words reached the audience, laughter began to leak out from various corners of the stands. The woman sitting next to me, a stranger, was also awkwardly aware of all the attention. Gradually, applause started rising from the stands. It was not the kind of applause meant for cheering. It felt more like applause for me. Surrounded by that sound, I turned to Matthew and said my final words. "Thanks for the cheer. I'm leaving now." With that, I placed the banner on Matthew's lap and headed back to the children. Emma and Ryan looked surprised by my actions for a moment, but without saying a word, they followed me out of the venue. On the way home, in the car, Emma said, "Mom, we don't need Dad anymore. We don't need someone like him. Mom, from now on, we'll support you." Their words tightened my chest, but at the same time, I felt a surge of courage to take the next step. "Thank you, Emma, Ryan. From now on, the three of us will walk forward together," I answered through tears, gripping the steering wheel. It felt like a new path, different from before, was slowly beginning to come into view. Later, Matthew's affair spread rapidly after being broadcast nationwide, and his reputation plummeted. The banner displayed on the screen became a hot topic on social media and quickly went viral. Matthew, now branded with the shame of being an unfaithful husband, became isolated at work. Unable to bear the situation, he eventually resigned from his company. Jessica, too, couldn't withstand the pressure. She started distancing herself from Matthew and eventually ended their relationship. Matthew was left completely isolated, with no one to turn to. As for me, I hired a lawyer and smoothly proceeded with the divorce process. Matthew had no energy left to continue fighting, and we reached an agreement on compensation and child support that met my expectations. One quiet night, after the children had fallen asleep, I found myself alone. Though the past with him could never be erased, I knew I didn't have to be bound by it. Now, all I focused on was moving forward, building a new future with Emma and Ryan. With my own hands, I had grasped peace and hope.
I'm Mary. While I was working in my upstairs room, I suddenly heard a noise from the living room downstairs. Could it be a burglar? Ready to call for help at any moment, I gripped my cell phone and went to check the living room. There, I found my sister-in-law Jennifer. Jennifer? Oh, Mary, you're here. Jennifer turned around at the sound of my voice. You scared me, sneaking in like that. Huh? This is William's family home. So, it's practically my home too. William is the name of my brother. Setting that aside, I kind of understood what Jennifer was trying to say. But still, isn't it rude to enter someone's house without permission? I couldn't help feeling irked. But Jennifer seemed displeased with my reaction. Approaching me, she said, "Instead of that, you're home again today? Well," sigh, "having someone like you as a sister-in-law is really the worst." Excuse me? What do you mean by that? Are you still clueless? I'm saying it's embarrassing to be single and unemployed. Jennifer spoke to me in a mocking tone. I couldn't deny being single, but the unemployment part was a misunderstanding on her part. I do work, even if it's from home. So I quickly retorted, "I am working." But Jennifer didn't believe me. Instead, she mocked me further. Yeah, a home security guard, right? That's not it. Whatever. It's embarrassing and a nuisance, so just leave. I had no choice but to stay silent. I remembered that Jennifer had always been this way since our first meeting. It was years ago when Jennifer first came into our lives. William had brought her home, introducing her as the person he wanted to marry. I didn't intend to meet Jennifer then. Not because I opposed the marriage, but simply because I was a recluse. This began in high school, due to my inability to gauge social distances. Making friends was difficult. This led to me becoming increasingly withdrawn from school and eventually becoming a recluse. But neither my parents nor William blamed me. "It's okay if you don't want to go to school," my dad Robert would say. "Maybe you'll find what you want to do if you take your time." William encouraged me, and my mom Ashley silently supported me. Thanks to them, I could deeply consider my future. "I can't go outside, but maybe there's something I can do from my room." With that, I decided to see what I could do with a computer. In this era, as long as you have an internet connection, anything is possible. There are ways to work other than going to an office. I'll start with what I can do alone. After that, I began to explore various possibilities. But with little knowledge or skill, there wasn't much I could do. I feel like I can't do anything. It was during such a low moment that William came to me with an idea. "Mary, you play games, right?" "Games? A little, I guess." "How about trying to be a game tester?" William brought me a job opportunity as a game tester. The task was to check whether pre-release games worked properly. It didn't require any special skills. All it needed was motivation and perseverance. "I'd like to try that," I answered immediately. And so, I began working as a tester. This job suited me perfectly. I could work diligently on my own. Reporting was as simple as sending emails. Even for someone like me who struggled with social interaction, this was manageable. I immersed myself in the tester job. As I worked, I realized something. If I knew more about programming, maybe I could even suggest fixes. That's how I started to get interested in programming. But programming requires a lot of learning. Usually, people study it at IT vocational schools. However, it's not necessary to attend such schools. There are online courses, and you can also study independently. It's all about having the will, isn't it? I used the internet to its fullest to start learning programming. I explored various sites, accumulating the necessary knowledge. Whenever I didn't understand something, I'd ask someone online. And someone I didn't even know would kindly respond. "Someone is responding to my voice." That made me happy. Gradually, I found friends who were also studying programming. We interacted online, and I started sharing personal things. Initially, our interaction was just through text, but it eventually led to voice calls, and finally, meeting in person. I was nervous, of course. Memories of my bitter high school days resurfaced. But I was no longer the high school me. Dressed up a bit, I went to the meeting place, where several men and women of my age were present. I timidly approached them, but we hit it off quickly. It was no different from our online interactions. The only difference was whether they were behind a screen or in front of me. Feeling reassured, I got lost in conversation. Then, someone suggested, "Let's start a business." I was anxious, but I thought I could work if it was with these people. I agreed immediately. That's how I started a company with friends I met online. Some had experience in sales, others had worked in regular companies. With such a diverse group, we faced no major issues in starting our business. "Mary, just do what you can," they told me, and I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I committed to giving my best in what I could do. And then, a month later, I received my first paycheck. It was totally different from the earnings I got as a tester. It was my first salary as a full-time employee. For someone who had given up in high school, this was a huge deal. Now, I'm like everyone else. Until now, I had lived in a world isolated from society. But this made me feel like a part of the community. Afterwards, I thanked my parents and William with my first salary, a token of gratitude for not giving up on me when I became a recluse. My parents were happy, and so was William. Their smiles motivated me to work even harder. The company grew rapidly, and my salary increased significantly. However, I didn't have much to spend it on. Most of my work was from home, so I didn't need things like suits for commuting. The only place I'd occasionally go was the nearby grocery store. Since my work was almost like a hobby, I had virtually no use for money. Mom, what should I do? Should I just save it?
Well, saving is good, but sometimes it's okay to spend boldly.
After much thought, I decided to buy something significant. A house. My workplace is my room. It needs to be a place where I can relax and concentrate on work. In an apartment, you have to be mindful of neighbors. So, a detached house seemed like a better option.
I'll buy a house with land.
It was quite a bold idea, even for me. But at that time, I didn't think too deeply about it. So, I bought a detached house with land. Robert and William were surprised, but they're not the kind of people to oppose what I do. They accepted it graciously. Only Mom seemed worried. I shouldn't have said anything. Mom regretted her words.
It's okay. I wanted to buy it.
Really? If that's the case, then it's fine. Mom's regret might not be completely gone, but that changed instantly when we moved in.
This kitchen is so user-friendly.
Ashley was overjoyed with the state-of-the-art kitchen. That moment I felt glad I bought the house. Robert also expressed his satisfaction.
It's close to the company, and having a parking space is convenient.
William spoke to me earnestly.
I'm proud to see Mary all grown up.
It's because you introduced me to the tester job.
But without your efforts, this wouldn't have happened. You're amazing, Mary.
Thank you. I owe so much to William. That's why when I heard about William's fiancée coming, I decided not to meet her. I thought it'd be better to pretend I didn't exist, so William wouldn't be judged because of me. But William thought differently.
Mary is my proud sister. I want you to greet the woman who's going to be your sister-in-law.
Okay, I stand. With William's words, I couldn't refuse. So, I decided to meet Jennifer.
Nice to meet you. I'm Jennifer.
My first impression of Jennifer was that she liked brands. Apparently, she worked at a bank, and her clothes and accessories were all branded. Even her perfume was from a top brand. However, she spoke elegantly and seemed considerate. My parents quickly took a liking to her. Thus, the family meeting went smoothly. Well, I have work to do, I said, trying to leave early. I thought it would be fine for the rest to enjoy a meal together, my parents, William, and Jennifer. That's what I thought. My parents and William didn't try to stop me, but Jennifer was different. As I was about to leave, Jennifer stopped me.
Hey, why don't we exchange contact information? We're going to be sisters-in-law, after all. But... Come on, let's get going,
Jennifer said cheerfully. For some reason, her smile sent chills down my spine. I had a bad feeling about her. But I couldn't refuse in that atmosphere. Okay, I'll go get my cell phone. I just wanted to get it over with quickly. I could always brush her off if she contacted me. Thinking this, I went to get my cell phone. Jennifer then smirked unpleasantly.
Since we're here, let's go together. Show me your room, will you?
Okay. I took Jennifer to my room. Looking into my room, Jennifer said.
So, this is your room. You're a recluse here, aren't you? A recluse? Yes. Just staying in your room, unemployed. Isn't that right?
I instinctively braced myself against such a spiteful person. Then, laughing, Jennifer said,
What? You're on guard against me. Did you hate being called unemployed that much? Of course. I'm not unemployed. Home-based work isn't a real job. You can't make a living that way. I can. Yeah, as long as someone supports you. Supporting me? Thinking you're a full-fledged adult with just a small income? Don't make me laugh. How much I earn is none of your business. It matters to me. Having an unmarried, unemployed sister-in-law is embarrassing. I am single, but I'm not unemployed. Oh right, you do home-based work. Sorry, I'm forgetful.
She was completely looking down on me. Jennifer didn't seem to consider remote work as a real job. It was clear she just wanted to tease me and be alone with me. That's all I understand. I glared at Jennifer, visibly annoyed.
Looking at me like that won't change the reality. If you're upset, find a real job. I am working. You're such an annoying child. If you weren't here, I could have lived in this house.
Jennifer's spiteful words were unbearable. She could visit, but she couldn't force me out. Because this is my house. Yet, unaware of this, Jennifer frequently came over and whispered to me to leave when my parents and William weren't around. It was intolerable.
Can't she just stop?
I grumbled to myself. And today, it finally happened. Jennifer silently entered the house and outright told me to leave. That was the last straw for me.
I won't leave. And don't enter the house without permission. What? An unemployed person telling me off? I'm not calling you a nuisance. I'm saying what you're doing is unreasonable. Shut up. Be quiet for once.
Jennifer headed upstairs. I hurried after her and found her in my room.
What are you doing? This is my room.
I yelled, but Jennifer ignored me. Looking around my room, she said,
This is perfect. There's a computer and it's spacious. Better suited for me than you. This is perfect. There's a computer and it's spacious. Better suited for me than you. Get out of my room. Shut up, unemployed. You don't deserve it, so I'll take it. What? No way. Get out.
Somehow, I managed to push Jennifer out of my room. Then, I forcibly dragged her out of the house. I was surprised by my own strength. Thinking it was like playing with fire, I quickly called William. Despite being at work, William answered. What's up, Mary? Did something happen?
William, actually.
I explained how Jennifer had entered the house on her own, and also told him about how she had been demeaning me all this time. William was furious.
What? To my dear sister. I can't forgive this. Okay, I'll talk to her. Thanks, William.
After thanking him, I hung up. But I can't always rely on William. Pondering, I decided to call my colleague, James. James was a bit older than me. A college graduate, he used to work at a general company. He joined our startup wanting to do IT work. With his extensive experience, I made it a point to consult James when in trouble. James, it's not about work. I have a personal issue.
What's wrong?
Well, I discussed Jennifer's actions with James. Angry as if it were his own issue, James said.
That's wrong of Jennifer. You're not at fault, Mary.
Right, yeah.
So, have you figured out any countermeasures?
That's just it. I haven't at all.
Then, I'll tell you a good strategy. It's this.
James shared a certain plan with me. Indeed, an interesting strategy. If successful, it would surely teach Jennifer a lesson. But there was one problem. Won't this trouble you, James?
Don't worry about me. Just go ahead and try it.
Thank you. I decided to execute James's plan. Immediately, I contacted a certain place. Months passed while I implemented the countermeasures. Jennifer's attacks on me ceased, probably due to William's scolding. I hope it stays this way. I was slightly relieved. However, the world isn't always so kind. A few days later, Jennifer called me.
Can I come over tomorrow? It's okay if I call before coming, right?
Her tone was deliberately unpleasant. Still, if Jennifer came, there was a high chance of executing James's plan. Reluctantly, I pretended to agree. The next day, Jennifer arrived at the house and immediately asked,
Are your parents here?
They're not. They're on a trip.
Oh, that's perfect.
While saying so, Jennifer brought a large bag into the house.
What is that? My clothes and various things. Are you planning to stay here? Not just staying. I'm moving in. So, you should leave. You're an eyesore.
It finally happened. With that in mind, I quietly nodded.
Understood. You're complaining. Wait, you understand?
Yes,
I'll leave. You suddenly became obedient.
I've thought about it. You are William's wife. I owe a lot to William. I said this with a solemn demeanor. Jennifer then started to smile unpleasantly.
Finally, you understand. Now, get out. Useless unemployed.
Okay. I immediately went upstairs. Actually, as per James's instructions, my belongings were already packed, and I had a place to move to. In other words, everything was going according to James's plan. I called the moving company and went to the living room, where Jennifer was relaxing on the sofa.
You're fast. Well, a reclusive unemployed wouldn't have much to move, I guess.
Although I wanted to retort, I didn't. I'm leaving now. The movers will come later for my things.
Yeah. And please don't regret this. Regret? As if. I'll feel refreshed without a recluse around.
Leaving Jennifer's mocking laughter behind, I left the house. Then I contacted my parents.
Dad, are you enjoying the trip?
Yeah, I'm really happy with this present.
I'm glad. Actually,
I told them about Jennifer's visit to the house. I explained the reason for the sudden trip and James's strategy, and I asked them to act accordingly. My parents agreed readily, largely due to the description of Jennifer's unreasonable behavior.
this will work out well. She'll regret it.
Muttering to myself, I headed to my new home. A few days after moving, the end of the month was approaching, and I was excited.
Any time now. Jennifer should contact me.
I waited for the call. Then it came. The phone rang, and as soon as I answered, Jennifer yelled,
What's the meaning of this? What's wrong, Jennifer? Why do I have to leave? You don't have to leave. Just pay the rent. Rent? This house is our family home, isn't it? It was, but I've sold it. You sold it. Why do you get to decide that? Because it was my house. Your house. Yes, that house was.
I explained about starting an IT company with my colleagues and working there. William must have told her too. But since Jennifer looked down on me, I assumed she hadn't listened. So, I explained it all from the beginning. Shocked, Jennifer asked,
So, you really sold this house? Yes. Are you familiar with leaseback? What's that?
Leaseback is a system where you sell your home to a company and then rent it to continue living there. It has benefits like paying off loans with the sale proceeds. I used that leaseback. I sold the house and land I bought, then stopped paying rent after the contract ended when Jennifer arrived. That meant Jennifer couldn't continue living there unless she signed a new contract herself. But Jennifer, who relied on William, wouldn't be able to pay the rent herself. And I doubted she would want to live there with William after driving me out. In short, Jennifer would have nowhere to live.
Remember this after playing your games.
I couldn't help but laugh at her empty threat. It was entirely her fault. If she hadn't looked down on me, she could have had a happy married life. Such a pointless person. She'll probably end up divorced from William, and I won't have to see her again. That's what I thought. But it was that evening, when James called me.
Mary, something terrible happened. Can you contact your brother right away?
He should be finishing work soon, so I can.
Then, tell him and also.
James spoke rapidly about various things. Essentially, he wanted me and William to come to his house. Curious, I contacted William and then headed to James's place first. When I arrived, there was a commotion outside James's apartment. Many police officers were there, and neighbors had gathered to see what was happening.
James, what happened?
I approached James, who was in the middle of the commotion.
Actually, some weird woman tried to take my laptop.
Here's what James told me. While he was taking a shower during a break at work, he heard a strange noise and peeked into his room. There, a woman was rummaging through his belongings, apparently trying to take his laptop. Of course, James immediately confronted her. As soon as he shouted, the woman got startled and ran away. But she tried to escape through a window, fell, and lost consciousness. That woman was Jennifer, and she was arrested by the police for breaking and entering. However, Jennifer insisted,
"This is my sister's room,"
and wouldn't back down, causing the commotion.
"This isn't your room, right?"
The police asked. Of course, it wasn't my room. But I wondered why Jennifer thought it was my room. When I asked her, Jennifer said to me,
"It's your room. I sent your belongings here." "My belongings?" "Yes. I heard it from the movers."
When Jennifer was at the house, I had called the movers and left her there. But, as per James's instructions, my belongings were first sent to his room, then forwarded to my new home. Unaware of this, Jennifer assumed the delivery address was where I moved to.
But that doesn't justify breaking and entering, does it? It's your fault. You.
Jennifer's excuse was this. When I left the house, I had all furniture and appliances taken by the movers. However, Jennifer apparently thought something would be left behind. Her plan was to sell the leftovers and use the money for living expenses. But that plan failed. She thought she could still manage if the house was there. But then she learned she couldn't live there anymore. In retaliation, she planned to sell my laptop for cash. She intended to enter my house, but ended up in James's room instead. That was the real story.
It's your fault. Remember this.
As the police took her away, Jennifer continued to shout such things. In the end, Jennifer and William got divorced. William demanded compensation from Jennifer. However, there was no way Jennifer could pay it, because she had debts. She wanted to take over our house to sell its contents for money to pay off her debts. Anyway, Jennifer is now in prison, unable to do anything. And her parents ended up paying the compensation on her behalf. Because of Jennifer's incident, I've come to rely on James more than ever. I might not have been able to do anything without him. That's when I realized something. I'm in love with James. Now that I've realized this, I've started to make strong advances towards James.